So Tna Impact took place once again in Orlando, Florida. The show starts with a 10-man gauntlet match in which the winner would become the number one contender for the World Heavyweight Championship and would face Magnus for the title at Sacrifice. Solid match. The match begins with James Storm and Gunner, and we would see the following wrestlers in this order: Robert Roode, Bully Ray, Ethan Carter III, Robert Lashley, Abyss, Sonata, Eric Young, and Jeff Willow. During the match, Magnus comes out and provides commentary with Mike Tenay and Taz. Rockstar Dud causes Jeff Willow to be eliminated, and Willow chases him to the back. And Eric Young ends up winning the match, and he will face Magnus at Sacrifice. However, Young tells Montel Porter to come out, and he tells Porter that he wants his shot at Magnus for the title on the show. Porter gets an audible confirmation that Young is willing to go despite his arm injury. He then reminds Magnus that he's a wrestler, not a commentator. Porter tells him that he'll be defending the title versus Young on the show. Magnus grabs the mic and leaves the commentator's desk. He approaches Porter and tells him that he's fine with the match because it will have the quote-unquote Magnus rules stipulation. But Porter steamrolls Magnus by not only eliminating that mandate, but declaring that a loss by disqualification or countout will result in a title change, that Abyss cannot come down to the ring to help Magnus, and that anyone from backstage that interferes in the match will face employment termination. Magnus complains, but Porter tells him to get ready, and then he leaves. Now, Samoa Joe not being in this match may have been the immediate disappointment, but the one that slowly became evident as the match progressed was the absence of Austin Aries. When Robert Lashley came out, it was clear that Aries wasn't. And it remains baffling as to why he's not being used the way that he should. Young winning the match was a surprise, but getting the title match on this show rather than at Sacrifice may have made the result partially obvious. But one would still want to see if TNA would actually do it. So then we see Dixie Carter and Rockstar Dud backstage. Who cares? And then Willow shows up and goes bonkers. Whatever. So then we have a women's match for the number one contendership to the women's championship. Angelina Love versus Gail Kim versus Brittany versus ODB. Decent match. The match ends with ODB whipping Gail into the corner, which causes Gail to crash into Angelina. ODB charges toward the corner, but Gail moves out of the way, and ODB smashes Angelina. ODB takes Gail down with a couple of shoulder blocks, and then she whips her off the ropes and delivers a fallaway slam. ODB hits the corner again and Bronco rides Angelina. She drags Angelina from the corner by her legs, but Gail grabs ODB by the hair and throws her down. ODB kicks Gail away, but Brittany jumps over ODB, does a handspring off the ropes, and hits ODB with a moonsault. Brittany chooses not to go for the pin, and Angelina kicks her, and then hits her with a lifting reverse STO. Gail hits Angelina with a barrage consisting of a couple of kicks, a flying fist off the ropes, and a backbreaker. She goes for the eat defeat, but Angelina pushes Gail away and goes to the ropes to get help from Velvet. Gail comes up behind Angelina and rolls her up. Angelina's leg pushes her off, and Gail gets hit with spray from Velvet. Angelina nails Gail with the big boot and pins her for the 3. The winner of the match, Angelina Love. There was no point in having this match other than to ensure that each member of the women's division gets a check, particularly since Gail and ODB are not involved in the Beautiful People storyline. The previous interaction between Madison and Angelina was going to lead to a title match between them anyway. An attack on Madison by Angelina and Velvet backstage, in which Angelina demands a title shot, would have been all they needed to do. And the match time could have been used to either build up Brittany or debut a new female wrestler, either one being something that they need to do. So then we see Dixie Carter and Montel Porter backstage. Porter tells Dixie to say what she needs to say in the quickest before she gets kicked out on her ass. Dixie reminds him that she's still the company head and bashes him about getting physical with the talent. Porter says that he's ready to boot her, but she says that his personal company principles have made him drunk with power juice. Dixie tells Porter that he's only in charge because of one person, and she's going to deal with that person later. So once again, we're supposed to go along with the authority figure storyline that they chose to present. Porter has total power in TNA, yet Dixie is free to handle business with whomever, and Porter allows it. So then we see the American Wolves walk into Porter's office, where Mr. Duh and Zema Ion are present. Davey Richards and Eddie Edwards prepare themselves for the latest bullshit from the glorified jobbers as to why there will be no title match. Porter informs the American Wolves that Robbie E's flight is late, and both Mr. Duh and Zema Ion revel in their lack of balls. Porter has had it with their crap and declares that if Robbie E doesn't arrive by the start of the tag team title match that will take place, Mr. Duh and Ion will defend the belts. Porter continues to show his inconsistency of power. He previously allowed the jobbers to skip on a tag team title defense due to Mr. Duh's supposed confirmed injury report, and now he decides to make the tag team title match happen whether Robbie E shows up or not. One can make an argument about this being part of the storyline, but logic still has to be the focal point. So then we see Dixie Carter come to the ring. Dixie says that she and Bully Ray need to talk, so Bully Ray comes to the ring. Bully Ray sticks the mic out to the crowd as he drowns in the chants for him to drill Dixie into the wood. Bully Ray wants her to get wet, but she refuses. He tells Dixie that he approaches her, or rather appreciates her wanting to talk to him when she wouldn't do that before in Nashville. Dixie says that Bully Ray was foolish in getting suckered into being ambushed by Robert Roode. And she goes on to say that the King of the Tables match has already been put through 3 by Roode. Bully Ray acknowledges all of that, but says that he's still walking. Dixie wants to know why Bully Ray turned on her at Lockdown and cost her full control of her company. But Bully Ray tells her that the fans own the company. Dixie tells Bully Ray that she shelled out some serious dollars for a job that he failed to do, so she wants a refund. He tells her that he dropped it on some wheels and strip chicks. Bully Ray is about to drop his signature question, but Dixie grabs the mic from his hand, and throws it down. She sends the question to him, instead. Ann tells him the answer, ending it with a slap. Bully Ray backs Dixie into the corner, but then Robert Roode attacks Bully Ray from behind. Dixie tells Roode to get a table, and Roode sets one up in the ring. Roode positions Bully Ray, but Bully Ray hits Roode with punches and attempts to powerbomb him through the table. However, Roode escapes and runs to the back. Bully Ray turns back toward Dixie, then he looks at the table, then back at Dixie, then back at the table, then back at Dixie. Then a commercial break. After the break, we see Dixie backstage with Magnus. Magnus wants to know why she hasn't tended to his wants and needs since returning. And Dixie tells him that her business involves going home and not giving her attention to someone who has abyss and doesn't need her. Okay. First, Dixie is in the ring being cornered by Bully Ray. Then she's backstage with Magnus. What happened? Did Dixie beat the shit out of Bully Ray and then casually walk to the back? Or did she pull some I Dream of Jeannie shit and boinged her way back there? It's one thing when there are logic holes within TNA storylines that don't make sense, but there is no excuse for this truck-sized one. Speaking of the usual logic holes, why is Robert Roode taking orders from Dixie? She told him to get a table, and he did. Isn't this the woman that cost Roode his potential 10% by getting Bully Ray involved in the Lethal Lockdown match? The one he said he would go after if she screwed him. And he's following her orders. Also, after Roode escaped Bully Ray's attempt to put him through the wood, Roode just leaves. After the engagements that we have seen between Roode and Bully Ray, Roode just leaves. And made to look cowardly when he isn't. So then we have the World Tag Team Championship. The glorified jobbers defending against the American Wolves. Robbie E has not arrived, so Mr. Duh and Zema Ion are defending the belts. Decent match. The match ends with Mr. Duh and Ion lifting Eddie Edwards up in the air. But Edwards flips over both of them and catches both of them with a double Hurricane Rana. Edwards makes the tag to Richards, and Richards hits Ion with a short burst. He ducks Mr. Duh's blow and comes back with kicks to the chest. Richards whips Mr. Duh off the ropes, but Mr. Duh reverses the whip. Richards does a handspring off the ropes and hits Mr. Duh with an enziguri. Then he executes an exploder suplex on Ion. Richards charges the corner and hits Mr. Duh with a flying fist, then goes to the top rope and nails Mr. Duh with a missile dropkick. Richards goes for the pin but moves away, allowing Ion to miss him and hit Mr. Duh. Richards throws Ion out of the ring, then charges toward the corner, but Mr. Duh hits him with an elbow. Richards recovers, and he and Edwards give Mr. Duh the alarm clock. As Richards goes for the pin, Robbie E appears, pulls the referee out of the ring, and shoves him. The ref calls for the bell. The winners of the match by disqualification, the American Wolves, but they don't regain the World Tag Team Championship. We know the story. This program is stale because the tag team division is in need of rebuilding. Hopefully that starts when Richards and Edwards win the belts again. So then we see Christy Hemme in the ring. In a backstage segment before the break, she said that she needed to discuss commitment with Sam Shaw. She calls for him and he comes to the ring. Christy tells Shaw that she's changed her mind about him and that people don't get him. Shaw says that he's happy to hear what she's saying. Christy tells Shaw that she believes in him, and then she walks around him, touching his head, touching his face. Shaw attempts to take off his glove with his teeth, but Christy takes it off with her teeth. She tells him to close his eyes, and as Shaw is under the influence of her touch, we see a white van arrive on the big screen with the words Psychiatric Services on the side. The back of the van opens and Mr. Anderson comes out. As Christy continues to contain Shaw within hard-on land, Anderson makes it to the ring and gets behind Shaw. She tells Shaw to turn and open, and he sees Anderson. Shaw goes for it, and Anderson might checks him. He tells Shaw that he's sending him to the bin. Anderson throws Shaw out of the ring and takes him back to the van. He throws him in and closes the door, but then the door swings back open and knocks Anderson back. Shaw jumps out and runs away. This segment was a mess. Christy was capable of coming off sensual without being over the top, and she failed, with the puppy dog talk being the main reason why. She had to stretch the time until Anderson showed up, and that made it worse. The only positive from this is that there was progression. Now that Shaw knows that Christy has quote-unquote betrayed him by helping Anderson, his obsession may turn to hatred, and he may go after her with the intent to harm. So then we see Jeff Willow being Jeff Willow, and he challenges Ethan Carter III and Rockstar Dud to a handicap match next week. So then we have the World Heavyweight Championship. Magnus defending against Eric Young. Solid match. The match ends with Magnus executing the Michinoku driver on Young. He goes for the pin, but Young kicks out. Magnus leaves the ring and returns with the championship belt. He makes a move toward Young, but the referee takes the belt away. Young picks Magnus up and tries to hold him in a fireman's carry, but Magnus slips out and low blows him from behind. Young sinks to the mat, and Magnus goes for the pin, but Young kicks out. Magnus comes off the ropes, but Young takes him down with a crucifix pin. Magnus kicks out, but Young whips him off the ropes. Magnus reverses and bends down for a backdrop attempt, but Young picks him up and drills him with a pile driver and pins him for the 3. The winner of the match, Eric Young. He is the new World Heavyweight Champion. Show ends. Eric Young, the wrestler. Solid competitor, solid on the mic, well liked. Eric Young, the character. A comedic presentation that recently changed into a persona with serious slants. And that's where the issue is. TNA should have built Young's serious character more before putting the title on him. Then the questioning of his credibility as a world champion wouldn't be as constant. Nevertheless, he is the champion. But if TNA makes him a transitional one, the message would be that Young was rewarded for his 10 years of service to the company, but wasn't good enough to be the face of TNA. Is it better to be a transitional champion than to have never been champion? Sure, one can say he was a champion, but was he the champion for the right reason? On Tasmart 2002, and that was on Tna Impact Analysis for April 10th, 2014. If you're listening to me on YouTube, please leave your comments below. Click the like or dislike button. And if you subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. If you're listening to me on the Wrestling News Talk Facebook page, you can leave your comments below and click the like button if you like what I've been saying. If you have any questions or comments about TNA or wrestling in general, you can get at me on Twitter. Tasmart 2002, that's TAZMARK 2002. And if your comments exceed the 140, get at me with an email. Tasmart2002@gmail.com. And be sure to watch the TNA Impact review that I do with Chuck P. live every Sunday morning at 11 o'clock Eastern Time on Chuck P's YouTube channel. And if you can't watch us live, you can always watch the archive. Decent show. Decent show. We take a lot of things for granted in our society, but one thing that we cherish is our freedom of speech. With that freedom of speech come different opinions. And we need that. If we all thought the same, our society would be dull. However, those different opinions should not be suppressed, no matter how much we disagree. The YWC has a voice that is being suppressed for whatever reason, and his is a voice that should be strengthened, not silenced. Hashtag reinstate Andre Corbeil. I'm Tasmart 2002. Gone.